I find that sometimes we feel burnt out not because we're doing too much, but because we're doing too little of the things that make us come alive. Because I think one of the best ways of learning something is to teach it to somebody else. It's not just what you eat, it's how you eat.
A world-renowned brain expert here in the house. So I want to talk to you about unlocking your brain's
Yeah.
potential. And you came in with some things that you specifically wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I was just talking about some of the things during the pandemic. The metaphor I was using with clients is, we understand things based on symbols, metaphors, relating things, something we don't know to something we already know. Right, it's a great way of hacking your learning. And the metaphor I was using is that of a butterfly. And I feel like a butterfly is the profound symbol of transformation, right? And while the beauty is in the butterfly, a lot of growth happens in the cocoon. And I think a lot of times, people the past couple of years, they feel like they've been cocooning, right? They've been physically distancing themselves. They might be working remotely or learning, from home. They might be alone with their doubts. They might be alone with their fears. There's a lot of fear out there, and they might be feeling lonely, and mental health is a big challenge. So in Limitless, I have a quote from a French philosopher, and he says life is the C between B and D, which is interesting. Life is C between B and D, and B stands for birth, D stands for death, life, C, choice.
Hmm.
I really do believe that these difficult times, they could define us. These difficult times can diminish us, or these difficult times could actually develop us. We decide. We always decide on our choices. We could decide on our thoughts. We could decide on our behaviors. We could decide on what experiences mean. We could decide on how we want to feel more often. We certainly can decide what we put in our mind and in our body also as well, how we move our body. And just reminding people. So there are about 5 or 6 choices. Just I want to remind everybody, who's listening, that you could make to come out of this cocoon stronger, so that you could potentially even soar to new heights, right? I'll make them all C's because I tend to alliterate everything just to make it a little bit more memorable. I'm kind of OCD like that. And then we could chat about it. The first one, I think, in no specific order, the first C is clarity. I think solitude is a wonderful time for self-reflection. I don't think, I think self awareness is a superpower, and we don't, always in society when we're going 100 miles an hour, we don't take time and just kind of check in with ourselves, in terms of, one of the clarifying questions I love: what's most important to you in blank? What's most important to you in life? What's most important to you in a career? What's most important to you, if in zero based thinking, if we're, with everything going on, if you're to start over, what's most important to you in a relationship, in your personal contribution, in your health, right? So that gives us some values, because sometimes, again, there's a great book called Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a classic by Dr. Stephen Covey. He says, you don't want to climb the ladder of success, get to the top and realize it's leaning on the wrong wall,
Hmm.
right? And the second clarifying question, I think, besides what's most important to you in these areas, and which I would encourage everyone to use this time to do, is, are my actions today, align with those values? Are they supporting, that direction? Meaning, a lot of people, I'm sure, who are listening or watching on YouTube, that they feel like burnt out. They feel mentally exhausted, right? And they think it's because they're doing too much. And while that might be a contributing factor, I find that sometimes we feel burnt out not because we're doing too much, but because we're doing too little of the things that make us come alive.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And so those are the things that we're kind of pinpointing our target, our true north, what's most important to us in these areas, and our daily activities, leading us there. That's clarity. The second C, I would say, which, your podcast covers in so well, is care. We know that self care is not selfish. And I don't just mean, eating the best, amazing foods ever and optimizing our sleep. I also mean, like, part of self care is putting borders and boundaries around the things that are important to us, and also being conscious and standing guard to our mind of what we're letting inside. Meaning, we know when we're talking about the brain that with media, it's interesting. There's an algorithm, kind of like with our mind, like there is with Instagram or any social media. The algorithm primarily is whatever you engage with the most, you're gonna get more of, right? So if you watch your cat videos and cat posts, you're engaging and you're sharing cats, you're liking it, commenting on cat posts, then the algorithm shows you more cats, right?
Guilty. Yes.
Right. And then also, but our mind has a similar algorithm. And if we're just watching like the news and what's, on social media, dark, threatening, scary and fearful because our amygdala is getting hijacked. If it bleeds, it leads, that whole thing. We have to be very conscious because if that's what we're engaging with, then our mind's algorithm is going to, the filter, because we could pay attention to a billion different stimuli. Primarily, I think our brain deletes more, right? Otherwise we would be overloaded, overwhelmed. And so what it lets in are the things that you're building awareness for, you have questions about, that have dominant importance for. And if you're engaging with what's dark and scary, the challenge is we start seeing more and more of that in our perception. And that doesn't leave a lot of bandwidth for possibility, hope, opportunity, what you could be grateful for, right? And so that could be a challenge. We know that chronic stress has been shown to shrink the human brain. Chronic fear actually suppresses our immune system. So that's interesting, right? A whole area of science called psychoneuroimmunology. It makes you more susceptible to colds, to flus, to viruses, right? And so when we're talking about care, obviously there are a lot of things we could do to care for ourselves. And I'm just kind of highlighting the thing that might not be is what we're feeding our minds. And so we can make choices. We can make choices for clarity, is making these questions, the choices going back to power decisions on what we're feeding our minds and our bodies. Third C is kind of obvious, but it's not something we think about all the time. I think one of the antidotes to fear, going back to fear, is besides gratitude. And a lot of times we know gratitude. I did a Thanksgiving episode on our podcast about how gratitude can rewire our nervous system for performance. And it's interesting because you don't have to wait for a greater life to feel grateful. You
Hmm.
could start feeling grateful, and I think people would immediately say they have a greater life. Because what we appreciate appreciates, right? Yeah, it gets better and grows. But going back to that's one antidote to fear. The other one I would say is the third C, which is contribution.
Hmm.
I think making a difference. I think even for me, like growing up with learning difficulties, my biggest challenge, I mean, my superpower was being invisible, right? I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to, maybe deep down, I wanted to be seen and heard, but I was mostly hiding, in the back, sitting behind a tall kid because I never had the answers. So I was very phobic of public speaking, which the universe has this, sense of humor because my two biggest challenges were learning and public speaking. And, what do I do for a living? I
I
was
mean, now you're educating the world on how to learn faster, and
doing,
you
yeah,
talk publicly for a living.
yeah, and so it's kind of it's kind of interesting how your struggles can become strengths, right?
Mm.
Your their challenges could lead to change, which was what I'm hoping for with my sleep, right? Because of all this perfect storm of having this kind of severe challenge I want to overcome. I think one nice dominant question to ask yourself is, where's the gift in this? My challenges were learning, and the gift was I discovered how to learn better, right? I don't believe it's how smart you are. It's We've talked about this in previous podcasts. So it's really, how are you smart? My challenge was public speaking. I would be, I'd be so fearful. I would be shaking and almost pass out. And that led to a strength. And I hope there's a gift in even the challenges I had with sleep. I could tell you two of them automatically. Number one, with the lack of sleep, it forced me to double down on everything I teach.
Hmm.
Because how would I be able to perform and do anything if I wasn't, be able to have that edge of reading faster, remembering things, and assimilating information, and all my routines and everything. But the other gift was it forced me to be very conscious of my commitments. I don't know how it is with you, but some people who are watching might identify with saying yes too often, right? You overcommit, you have too many browsers open, and it uses up so much energy. And so when you have a finite, you feel like you have a limited amount of energy or temperament or emotion or, and like with your lack of sleep, then I don't say yeah. Everything for me is really, it's heck yes or heck no. I mean, that kind of filter. And so like right now, there's nowhere I'd rather be with no one else. You know what I mean? So everything is like it's very, makes things very clear, which I think it's important nowadays for people who are struggling with mental exhaustion, mental fatigue, burnout. Um,
People are so lax with their time, and it is the most precious and limited resource that we have. Once you spend it, you don't get it back.
Yeah, and that's the one thing. I mean, people could always make more money, I mean, and it's the one thing that's actually, equal, at least in a day. And not everybody has the same income or the same education level or the same network, right? But everybody has 24 hours in a day, right? We have 80, what is it, 86,400 seconds. And what we invest, we get get to keep in the future, but in whatever's not, it's just lost,
Hmm.
right? And there's no judgment. People want to binge watch, and do like whatever they do, or that's their life, then it's prerogative. People have choice and free will. It's amazing. But then we can't complain about stuff, then, right? I mean, you can't be upset by the results you didn't get by the work you didn't do. So, a lot of energy goes into complaining and comparison and overthinking, and we try to direct our clients away from that. But going back to contribution, I just feel like it's the antidote to fear. It's if I get nervous a little bit still, butterflies before. I'm here in Los Angeles. I just spoke for 2,000 people yesterday. I'm going out tomorrow to Vegas to speak for thousands there, and I still get a little nervous. But then I just think about contribution. Like I think about one person in that audience whose life, needs to could use some of this information, and I feel more obligation to be able to do that, because shame on me if there's somebody there struggling like I did so for so many years, and I don't help them, and that gets me out of myself and that contribution. So for us, we like Limitless, we gave away 100% of the proceeds, multiple six figures, to build schools. We built schools everywhere from Ghana to Guatemala to Kenya, full health care for the children, clean water, also Alzheimer's research. So many great organizations that you and I know of, and some of um, our peers. I lost my grandmother to Alzheimer's when I was going through my learning difficulties, and women, as you know, are twice as likely to experience Alzheimer's than men. So for specifically women's research.
Love that.
Um, so yeah, but I mean, in terms of contribution, it doesn't have to be like that. It could be, how can you invest some of a little bit of your time, your talent, your treasure, just to make a difference and just put you in a good place. Maybe make it food for frontline workers. Maybe it's checking on somebody who's elderly and a little bit compromised and they're lonely, that kind of thing. And then finally, the last couple of C's, besides clarity and care and contribution, I would say creativity. Like, I don't know, what have you been doing the past year and a half? I mean, everybody has like a to-do list, but do we have like a create list?
So
I
important.
yeah, I mean, I think the future belongs to creators. So I love it, that some people creating new businesses, some people are doing their music, and then they get the
Yeah.
guitar and they're singing. Other people are writing, but I think, even before this, jobs were going to they're being outsourced, right? They're going to automation, they're going to artificial intelligence, and what's not going to be outsourced to a machine is what's truly limitless. Like there's no limit to our creativity. There's no limit to human imagination. There's no limit to our ability to solve problems, our ability to come together, in difficult times. And so, yeah, it's interesting. There's during the Great Plague that Shakespeare, when I was doing research, created some amazing masterpieces. Macbeth, Antony and Cleopatra. During the plague, Isaac Newton had to physically distance himself from London. They closed down the university there, and he had to go home. Even back then, and he was sitting underneath a tree, and an apple fell on his head, and he created the theories of motion, the theories of gravity,
Hmm.
right? And so again, we don't have to do it at that level, but what have you always wanted to create, in your life? Maybe you're a parent, you wanted to create something, for your students, for your kids, maybe like homeschool. It's whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, it
I'd love
reminds
to.
me of one of my favorite lines from Game of Thrones.
Mhm,
Peter Baelish is talking to Varys in the I forget what it's called, like the main throne area
mhm.
in at King's Landing, and Varys says to Peter Baelish, that just everything is in such disarray. Everybody's warring, fighting. There's so much chaos, and Varys makes a comment implying that chaos is a pit. It's like a pit of despair, a pit into which all hope falls, never to be seen again, right? And Baelish responds to him, Varys, chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder. And I just love that. It
That
reminds
is really
me
good.
of
With
of that.
with the accent and everything.
Yeah, with the accent and
Yeah.
everything. It's one of my favorite lines in one of my favorite shows. So it's just something
Mm,
that always has resonated with me. The notion that, we tend to see danger and chaos as being a point of repression. Like
mhm,
some of us feel repressed during those moments, but then others see great opportunity,
mm.
which is, I think, kind of like, the gist of what it is that you're saying.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and I want to maybe we could chat about how mindset affects and kind of filters meaning for us. That somebody could have the same experience and interpret it in different ways. whether looking at the economy or politics or, any kind of situation.
Hmm.
So that's creativity. And again, simple choice. Life is a C between B and D. What choices can we make to just to be a little bit more creative? And I'm not saying this has to take a lot of time, you know, with this. It could be even journaling for 10 minutes, or writing or going. I think it's very important that we schedule a white space in our days, to just think and be creative. Because if we just wait in between, and it is those empty spaces are very rare. You know what I mean? It usually fills with other stuff that not as important. I always tell people I think the most important thing is to keep the most important things the most important things. It's kind of a little bit of a, a tongue twister, but yeah, it's not just about time management, it's about priority management, right? I'm going back to the 24 hours we have in a day. It's setting our priorities. We have the 24 hours in a day, but what are we going to emphasize? What are we going to put first? And like even Dr. Stephen Covey's going back to his book, right? Put first things first, right? And then finally, the fifth C, besides clarity and care and contribution, and creativity, I would say is capabilities. And this quote that I've heard in different iterations, I'm sure your audience has. It's like we don't rise to the level of other people's expectations as much as we fall to the level of our own training. And I think again we have a to-do list which is rapidly growing, but do we have a to learn list? Like what's on everyone's to learn list? And I think we do these things where now if especially if you are spending more time at home or have been spending more time at home and you have more time, like what are you putting on there? Because the future belongs to those learners, right? We have to constantly be upgrading our knowledge, our skills, our own abilities, to be more valuable. And I think one of the most important things people could be doing is reading. I did so much reading. I was with so many of our clients. We had reading, challenges, a book a week club, and everything else like that. We got so much engagement, this past year and a half because people, and in book sales, I hear are actually doing really well,
Hmm.
because of everything. And and I just think if somebody has decades of experience and they put into a book, and you could sit down in a few days and read a book or listen to an audible, then you could download decades in a days. The average person reading one or two books a year compared to somebody who's doing upwards of 50 books a year. Huge. It's not even like a gap between those who have and those who don't have. There's also a gap of those who know and those who don't know. And those who know can make better decisions, going back to the power of decisions and choice, more accurate, useful decisions. And so, what's on everyone's to learn list? And my focus, we've covered speed reading in a previous episode on your show. My focus is on meta learning. Learning how to learn. Because I feel like if someone could learn how to learn, like learn how to, what does that mean? Learn how to focus and concentrate, learn how to study better, take notes, understand information better, remember that information, improve their memory. And make better, critical thinking. I think they could apply that towards anything better, whether it's money, management, marketing, martial arts, music, everything gets movement, everything gets better and easier. So those are five. I would also add now that I think about it, a six C. There are probably a lot more six C's. I'm curious. People could post this on social media and suggest it, tag us both so we get to see it. Community,
Hmm.
with this where people feel separate, and so distance or apprehensive. I think more and more people need to connect, and who we spend time with is who we become. And people ask, with the book title Limitless, it's like, how do you become limitless in this limited world? And my answer, I think, really is we do it together.
Well,
Right.
there's that famous line, right? I don't know where it originated from, but you become the average of the five or
Mm-hmm.
six or seven people that you hang out with most.
Yeah, I think it, and that's a having a positive peer group. We all need somebody to encourage us, to challenge us, to give us hope, to cheer us on. And if you haven't found that person, I would recommend be that person for somebody else.
Hmm.
You know, yeah, I was reading studies on mirror neurons and how they potentially could help. It's part of the in our nervous system where it creates empathy, and we start imitating people around us, right? Who we spend time with. I always tell people to watch because these are the things that imitated WATCH, and of course I use a lot of acronyms and mnemonics. The W say words. We tend to adopt the language patterns of people around us for
Hmm.
sure. The A in watch is your actions. Certainly, we start duplicating the behaviors of people around us. You spend time. That's why they say like married couples they tend to look like each other over time, or they look like their pet or something like that because they're spending a lot of time. But watch your actions. The T and watch thoughts. Thoughts are really things, and I know you've covered this in episodes. And the see and watch are character.
Hmm.
We tend to have the same standards of the people around us, in terms of integrity also as well. And and that spreads. That's as contagious as anything else. I read this quote. I don't know who to attribute it to, but it says, "Integrity is measured. It's the distance between your lips and your life."
Wow.
Integrity is the distance between your lips and your life, and yeah. So you want to manage your character, and then also the H in is your habits. We've heard the phrase, "First you create your habits, then your habits create you," and I really do believe, like, I think Duke University said 40% of our behaviors each day is habitual. We're not even thinking about it. We're just on autopilot, which is great because it conserves, as cognitive energy because there's a big load on coming from life. But then we'd actually sit down and design those things. And so, yeah, who we spend time with is who we become. If you're around nine broke people, be careful because you're probably going to be number 10. That kind of idea. But having a positive community of people that are supportive, and it's meant for like everything you date back, hunter gatherers, right? Survival. Those who had people watching their back and had a village were more likely to be able to survive. And so we got to pick our village. um, the African proverb: if you want to go further, you go alone. If you want to go faster, you go alone. If you want further, we go together.
I love that. And you are what you repeatedly do. I definitely
Hmm.
believe that to be true. Have you ever, I'm just curious, had
Yeah.
to unfriend somebody? What do you recommend for people that, like in that situation where they have a friend
Yeah.
group, but there's maybe one or two bad apples that you don't necessarily want to extract their habits and their patterns and energy from?
Yeah. I mean, I think my thing with we could do anything, but we can't do everything. That's this idea is like, everyone has goals. You could do anything, but you can't do everything. And I think the same thing happens with people, not just ideas and things we're implementing, but individuals.
Mm,
Meaning that you can be a great friend, but you can't put all your energy everywhere because there's always this, that it could deplete you. My feeling generally with that is that if somebody's drowning, certainly I want to help that person, right? And if I have, but if that person's going to pull me down and I'm going to drown also, and then I can't be there for my family and my friends and people are counting on me, then that could be an interesting choice point.
some people also just don't want the help.
This is true. Some people like there's some things, and I don't know who's listening to this that needs to hear this, but some things like, if you're in a storm right now, some things you can only learn in a storm, for sure. And then also, some people create a storm and they're upset that it rains, So I don't know, like, but yeah, when it comes to people, having a positive peer group is important, but it's about energy, right? And it's like some people are energy vampires. Some people are batteries included, but there's some people just I don't know where their batteries are, but they're stealing your batteries. They're stealing your dreams, they're stealing your hope. And some people could actually be sincere, meaning they could have positive intent because that's the road right is paved with positive intentions. Um, they don't want to, maybe they're saying like, why are you always listening to, Genius Life and reading all those books and, listening to, and or eating all those foods and stuff like that. But, maybe they're saying it because they don't want to lose you because you're growing and, they want to stay connected to you. Or maybe they don't want you to get your hopes up, or I can have some kind of positive intent. But they can be sincere, but they can be sincerely wrong also as well. So I think you can still love, especially if it's family or friends, you can still love them, but it doesn't mean you have to spend a whole lot of time with them, and having borders again and boundaries. You make sure when you say yes to somebody or something, we're not consistently saying no to ourselves.
I love that.
Yeah.
And, certainly this isn't the case for everybody, but we do live in a time that seems to applaud, at least to some degree, victim mindset.
Mhm.
Now there's an emotional home for people that just live in this persistent state of victimhood. And I think that's really unfortunate as well.
Yeah, I think, and this is all about, for me, it's all about maintaining our agency, our responsibility, our accountability, because I mentioned this on a previous episode with you, but it's, when I got to spend time with Stan Lee, I was like, who's your favorite superhero? And he says, Iron Man. And he's like, Jim, who's yours? And I said, Spider Man. because he had the Spider-Man tie on, and Spider-Man was one of my favorite because he was like, I wasn't really smart back in high school, but I was definitely like kind of bullied and awkward, and um, but and I still reverse things, Max, and sometimes maybe because of my my head injuries and stuff. When I read, sometimes I reverse things or I hear things. I was like, yeah, you're right. With great, and he's because when I said Spider-Man, he says, with great power comes great responsibility, and I reversed it. I was like, you're right, and the opposite is also true. With great responsibility comes great power. When we take responsibility for something, we have great power to make it better. But making complaining and making excuses, it doesn't feel like it's taking a whole lot of responsibility. And it's just, if anything, it takes up a lot of energy and a lot of time that could be used to making things better. And some people, when people are complaining, like most people, honestly, this it's called the spotlight effect. The spotlight effect is where we emphasize like what people are thinking about us, or if even they're thinking about us at all, right? In terms of comparison and everything. But I would say that and some people are just happy that it's you, that you're going through all this stuff and they're just happy, but it doesn't affect real change. And so I think it's important for us to take personal responsibility. Even if I was to talk to the 9-year-old version of myself that was, really strong, I would say like, hey, you are 100% responsible for your life. And that's kind of harsh, but the truth is, yes, if it where we are right now, it's been shaped by our past experiences, external factors, the expectations of other people, and everything. But we are 100% responsible for our life right now and moving forward. And when we claim responsibility and agency, we have the power to make things better. Because if what's the alternative? Like we just, complain. I mean, like, yes, we can complain, and it could be true. And so what? Like, what has changed in our life?
So well said. How can we become better learners? You talked about meta learning
Hmm.
before, but I mean, I think like this whole process of knowledge acquisition, retention, and utilization. How can we
Yeah,
become better at that? I'm also really interested in this topic. I'd love if you could speak to this.
yeah.
The idea of verbal fluency.
Hmm.
You listen to some people such as yourself, such as Jordan Peterson, Russell Brand, people
Hmm.
with profound skills when it comes to the verbal fluency, being able to like not just retain knowledge, but to spit it out like
Hmm.
like a linguistic surgeon. I think that's a skill that a lot of people, especially with the proliferation of podcasts and apps like Clubhouse and things like that, really
Right.
want. So if you have, yeah,
Yeah.
how can we better achieve
Do
that?
you think there's a parallel between that and being able to express yourself, not just like verbally, so people could hear it auditorily, but also through writing? Do you think
Hmm.
some people that, in your background have,
There's
as a,
probably a correlation. I think I mean, some people are better writers than they are
Mhm.
speakers. Some people are better speakers than they are writers. Some people are great at both.
Yeah. I mean, and also how it presents itself. Part of it, was this was definitely trained. So I just need to address the thing that I wasn't like born to any degree. I'm successful in those kind of areas. It's definitely not something that I was born with. It's something that was trained through patience, through persistence, through practice. And so it's definitely not a natural gift for me. My teachers would have been surprised I read a book, dude.
Hmm.
Like if none, much less wrote a book. I was on the debate team for literally one day, and so I joined because I needed to up my my criteria to be getting into school and stuff like that back in high school. And I was just like, I can't do this. I was like so paralyzed. I mean, I think a lot of it also comes from the amount of input I have
Hmm.
in terms of reading. So I get to read and see the different styles from all the different authors, and see certain things I like, certain things. There's no such thing, I believe, as necessarily in a lot of ways a good or bad memory. I think there's more of a trained memory and untrained memory. It certainly helps that I could remember these quotes, my sayings, over pretty easily and effortlessly, just because that muscle has been flexed for so many years.
Do you write them first? Like, what's
Yeah.
your process like?
Yeah, if I see a great quote in a book, I'll highlight it. I will write it down or put it in a notepad.
Hmm.
I'm also a little practice because some of it is spaced repetition where I'll look at it pretty every so often, and even comment with these quotes. If I come up with my own quote, I'll comment it on on your Instagram or other peers because they'll post something. I'm like, oh, that's really interesting on kindness, or responsibility or accountability, or growth, and then I'll put like my quote there. So then I get to see it. So the repetition definitely helps. Um, and so, and also it's personally meaningful for me, meaning that when you tie something to your purpose, it's a whole lot easier. Just like when people learn something and they're interested in that topic, and they have higher fidelity, and they're able to not only learn it better but retain it longer also as well. When it comes to a model of accelerated learning, and we've covered in different portions of these, and maybe you could put in your show notes, in previous episodes. Um, let me show you my model for it. This is my framework for accelerated meta learning, and I would actually I'll make this interactive with everyone who's listening because I would actually love to ask you. I'll run you through the model. All right, so if you're not working out and or driving or something that's dangerous, like maybe take notes on this, and that'll work. So I want everyone to take out a piece of paper and just think about an area of your life where you feel stuck. And I did this on a podcast on how to get unstuck. It was a this story where this truck driver wasn't paying attention, as often we don't pay attention in life, and he ends up going underneath a bridge, and the bridge is too low for his cargo, and he gets stuck. And so, what do we do? That's like what we do in life. Sometimes we're not paying attention, we hit something, we get stuck, immobilized, and what do? You just start putting on the gas, and sometimes we like, oh, we're stuck in this relationship, I'm stuck in this button, I have to work harder. And
Hmm.
then he just gets more and more stuck, right? And then he tries to back out. And by that time he can't anymore because he's really in there. And then all this traffic starts building up behind him, obviously, and it starts to really, really build up. And crowds start showing up, wondering what's going on, getting out of their cars and everything. And then emergency vehicles come, and they don't know what to do. They start pushing like the truck through the bridge, and nothing. They start trying to pull it out, nothing. And then there's this 6-year-old child, there watching all this with his parents, and he was like, "Why don't you let out some of the air in the tires?" He did it. The truck came down, and obviously it came out because what the adults wanted to do is they wanted to blow up they were going to destroy the truck,
Hmm.
right? And that's kind of like the elusive obvious. And I think sometimes, even when you're looking at health and the state of health, sometimes the elusive obvious is, it's right there in front of us, that a child could see it, but, there's so much complexity out there, and anybody can they make things more complex. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with complexity, but sometimes people use it to create, chaos and confusion. And sometimes it's, the simple answer is sometimes the best. So I want to think about an area you feel stuck, where you feel like, and limitless is not, let's get clear. Limitless is not about being perfect, right? Limitless is about advancing. It's about making progress, not comparing yourself to anybody else, but, who you were yesterday, or maybe the best version of yourself. For me, it's always been, who do I want to make proud? It's always been the same answer. I got this question like 15 years ago. Like, who do you want? Why are you doing what you do? Because I think purpose plays a big role in what motivates us to excel, right? Um, who are we doing it for? Who's counting us to be, on our A game, right? To be able to show up really well. And for me, I want to make proud two people, right? And a lot of people, when I say that, they automatically think of, parents or something. And that's actually never, I mean, I want them to be, but I have no control over whether or not people perceive that, or kids or whatever. But I always want to make that 90-year-old version of myself proud, the 90-year-old me.
Hmm.
And then, and then the 9-year-old me, thinking about that 9-year-old boy who was labeled broken, by a teacher, or, bullied and everything else. I want that boy to be proud of who he's becoming. But that's my purpose, going back to that. So feel like where you're not making progress, and maybe where you feel like you're in a box, everyone. And that box, and whether maybe it's a health, maybe it's your health or wellness, maybe it's relationships, maybe it's financial or impact. um, that box is by definition three-dimensional. So the three forces that contain that box, but there are three forces that will liberate you out of that box. And I call it the limitless model. And going to answer your question for meta learning, draw a Venn diagram. So I want everyone to draw three intersecting circles, and kind of like Mickey Mouse, two ears that overlap and a face that overlap with those two ears. And even if you can't draw it, just imagine it. And even if you can't imagine it, because people, then imagine you can imagine it, right? And then, so I'm going to illustrate those three dimensions by three M's, right? The last one, the face, I'll start with, which is the one on the bottom, are the methods. Those are the methods of accelerated learning: how to remember names, how to learn a language, how to memorize a TEDx talk or a toast at a wedding, how to read faster. Those are methodologies. And, in the case of maybe health, maybe it's methods for intermittent fasting, right? Or whatever, fitness, or whatever happens to be, exercise. Everybody knows the methods, But if they're still stuck in a box, then something's not being addressed, right? Two forces. Sometimes they're invisible. So those are the first two circles. The first one is your mindset, right? And we alluded to that, in the beginning. Mindset for me, very specifically, is the set of assumptions and attitudes. It's attitudes and assumptions about something.
Hmm.
So your mindset about health. What are your attitudes and assumptions about health? What are your attitudes, assumptions about money? What's your attitude? Because that's certainly going to affect things, right? Your attitudes, assumptions about relationships, and what it means to be, you know, um, a good friend. Attitudes is assumptions also about yourself. So let's start there. So three things I know would fall in that circle for everybody, and people could write this down. What I believe is possible, right? Because someone could learn a method on how to get super fit or cut or whatever, right? But if their mindset is I don't believe it's possible, then they're still stuck in that box,
Right.
right? They can learn a methodology for remembering names and faces, but if they believe, oh, I'm too old, I'm really dumb, I was able, then they're still stuck. So mindset, what I believe is possible. Second one, what I believe I'm capable of. Because somebody could believe it's possible for you, Max, but they might not believe they're capable of it,
Hmm.
right? And so that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, the method, they're not even going to do the method because all behavior is belief driven, right? And so, I always tell people like people come. I did just this yesterday morning when I was speaking. People at the break are like, oh Jim, I'm just really have a horrible memory. I just say, look, stop. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them, right? Because like whatever your brain is like this supercomputer, and your self talk is the program it will run. So if you tell yourself, I'm not good at remembering names, you will not remember people's names because you just program your computer not to,
It's
right?
a limiting belief, right?
It certainly is. In there in Limitless, I talk about 7 lies to learning because I think learning precedes everything, right? And whatever you're going to apply that to. And one of the lies is like genius is born. Like people either have, but I and we just talk about how genius is built, right? And different things or how your memory is fixed, right? And like your shoe size, and it's absolutely not true, right? And so we debunk those lies. A lie for me stands for, of course, stands for something. Limited idea entertained.
Hmm.
It's a limited idea that you're entertaining. It's not necessarily true that you're too old or you're not smart enough or you're not capable. It's just an idea that we're giving it certainty when it doesn't have to have it. You know what it is? It's just a bunch of BS, right? Belief systems, right? So everything stands for something. It's all the negative belief systems that we have. But going back to mindset, what I believe is possible, what I believe I'm capable of. And the third one I'll throw in there if we want to get really raw in this conversation, what you believe you deserve, in terms of I think a lot of times like people might think it's possible or maybe they're capable of it, but they self-sabotage, right? Because they don't believe they deserve it because of something, expectations, opinions of parents or whatever it is, or past something they were hurt in a relationship or whatever. They don't believe they deserve that money. They don't deserve to be healthy. If somebody doesn't believe it's possible for them to heal or they don't believe they deserve to be healthy and heal, what are those methods going to do for them? Right. So these are the things that need to be addressed. We talk about different strategies in the book, but then there's also, there's talk therapy, right? There's things that people could do with plant medicine, and stuff like that. There's EFT, emotional freedom technique, tapping, right? EMDR. There's all kinds of strategies, self hypnosis, a lot of strategies. But how can you address it unless you pinpoint it, right? Otherwise, if you're not the beginning point of anything for people to change is awareness. And some people aren't even aware and they're wondering why, how come I know all this stuff, but I'm not doing any of this stuff? Right. Because that first M is not being addressed. And then,
I started doing talk therapy over the
Mhm.
course of the pandemic for the first time in my adult life. And my therapist practices, she specializes in EMDR.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm a fan.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. And then tapping is just like an extension of that you can do on your own,
Hmm.
right? It's so cool.
Yeah, there's so many resources that are available for people, who are just looking, and willing to do their research. And I appreciate everybody who's even on that path because, I believe that there's a version of ourselves that we haven't met yet, and the goal is to keep showing up every single day, right, until we're introduced to that person, till we get to meet that person. But so first of all, it's mindset. I put that first because initially, Limitless was a book all on methods. It was just everything what I teach, for individuals and organizations on how to accelerate their learning and stuff. But in the before I hit send to my publisher, I was like, okay, this is my first book. I got to get this right. I want to be proud of this myself. Will 100% of the people read this book get, the results that they're hoping for? And my honest answer was no way, they won't, because they're not doing because I'm not addressing these two other areas, right? A lot of people know what to do, but they don't do what they know. Because the truth is, people know what they should be doing, but common sense is not common practice. So what keeps us from it? Mindset. The second M, the final M, is motivation, right? And I could break down motivation, and we could put accelerated learning. And I'd love to talk to you about these three areas. And when it comes to health, because I always like text you about like, hey, I have this person, I have this, or I have this issue, and I'm sure you get a lot of those texts. But so the second M is motivation, because you could have a limitless mindset. You could believe it's possible for me to learn this or to have this body or to have this relationship, whatever, and know what to do. But you can be not motivated. So then, if you're not motivated and you're procrastinating, then you're stuck in that box. Because if you self sabotage, for mostly that's a mindset issue. You don't believe you deserve it or you're capable of it. But if you procrastinate, that's definitely a motivation issue,
Hmm.
right? And so you're not motivated to get unstuck. And so motivation for me is three forces, and this is the formula for limitless motivation. If you get anything out of this conversation, my big pet peeve is knowledge is not power. Like that's one of the lies I talk about in there in mindset. You have to dissolve that. Knowledge is potential power. It becomes power when we utilize it, right? Like somebody could read your book, and if they don't apply it, the truth is they're no different than somebody who's illiterate that couldn't read the book in the first place, right? And so all the podcast programs, coaching online, everything, none of it works unless we work, right? That's the truth. That being said, what motivates yourself and how do you motivate other people? You motivate your significant other, your kids to clean their room or to study, your prospects to be able to buy something that you have to offer. Here's the formula: P times E times S3. And I put a lot in, this is my 30th year of teaching. So I have a lot of field testing in terms of why do some people go through our program, 100 people from 195 nations, and some people just don't complete it at all. P times E times S3. P, we've already mentioned, is purpose. All right. It's interesting. I had this encounter with somebody that I wouldn't say as a friend, but an acquaintance. And as context, this person was very unhealthy. I mean, like tipping point. I was like, he's a walking time bomb.
Hmm.
And friends, family, acquaintances, we were all just like, hey, why don't you stop doing this or start doing this? The thing never changed, right? And eventually has a heart attack, almost dies, and he goes back to his old lifestyle,
Wow.
right? And and but I see him on the street recently, and I was like, I didn't even recognize him, and because he looked familiar, but I was like, he was very different. And not only does he look younger and healthier, but he had just this glow about him. And I was like, like what happened? I was like, I'm just curious. Like he's like, oh, I'm doing this and this and I'm like, yeah, well, we've been telling you that for years. You should be doing that. Why are you doing it now? He's like, I came back from a business trip, and then my daughter was hysterical, like crying out of her mind. And when she finally stopped, she had a dream that I died and I wasn't, there, and this whole thing. And once he's like, everything changed, right? That's purpose, right? Purpose for a lot of people, it's not anyone can get intellectual cognitive purpose. Oh, I want to hit these goals because I want to make more money and I want to everyone knows that. But if they don't feel it, they don't do anything about it. Right. And I always go back to feelings because that's even core to memory. Information by itself is forgettable, but when you tie emotion to something, it becomes unforgettable. It's just like Maya Angelou's, saying that people forget what you say, they'll forget what you did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel.
Hmm.
Right. And then, but especially that's other people. But when we think about ourselves, like what are the things that we're remembering, the things that we feel? And if we don't feel that purpose, we're not going to do anything about it. So my big thing is get out of your head and put it in your heart. Right. That's the formula: head, heart, hands. Even if you look at the three M's, mindset's head, motivation's heart, and method is the hands, how you're going to actually use this stuff. Right. So you're going from head to your heart to your hands. And if you're just keeping your head, you have KPIs, goals, vision, whatever it is, but you're not acting with your hands because we're not logical. We're just not. We're biological, certainly. You think about dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin. We're just this chemical soup, right? And so, if you're a person that you want to motivate, this is for yourselves. But if you want to motivate your spouse or your kids or someone to buy, people don't buy logically; they buy emotionally, and they justify logically, right? So you got to get them to purpose. Now, here's the thing: that's the first part. Somebody can have limitless purpose and still procrastinate, not be motivated. You need E, and you're an expert at this. E stands for energy. A lot of time, let's say somebody's not sleeping, they have a newborn child, or they're freaked out with the pandemic and all these everything that's going on. They haven't slept in 3 nights. They're not gonna be very motivated to work out. They're just not, right? Because exhaustion will make a coward out of anybody,
Hmm.
right? It'll just stall everything. If let's say I say, people see photos of me with Elon or Oprah or these people. We bonded over books. That's my secret, right? I'm just very well read, and and these people, leaders are readers, right? And so, if to get through a book a week, the average person who just reads like 200 words a minute, about 45 minutes a day, right? The average book has about how many I don't know how many words you have in your book, but on Amazon they
I
say,
think about 80,000, 80 to
yeah,
100,000, something like that,
which
if
is
I recall
which
correctly.
is more than the average book,
Yeah.
but the average book has about 64,000 around. So the average person reads 200 words a minute. So that takes 320 minutes to get through a book. Sounds like a lot, but if you divide that by 7, that's about 45 minutes a day,
Hmm.
right? And you triple your reading speed, like 15 minutes a day, right? So that's why it's not, but 45 minutes a day, let's say you want to do that, that's your goal, to be motivated to read 45 minutes a day, but you just ate a big processed meal and you're in a food coma, right? Energy's down, then you're not going to be motivated, right? And so it has to be addressed. Stress takes a lot of energy out of the system. So it's not just about time management, priority management. What about energy management, right? And here's the thing, you do not have energy. You're like, yes, that's the problem. I do not have any energy. You do energy. You know what I mean? A big part of what we teach with quick learning, the principle is you take your nouns, you turn them into verbs, meaning people hypnotize themselves. Like I think your show, my show, it's about transcending. Big part of it is ending the trance, transcend, right? You end the trance about what's possible. And part of it is coming from the outside, marketing, media saying you're broken and you just like, fear, everything else like that. So that's a trance, but also it's self hypnosis. When you say, I don't have creativity to write today, you don't have creativity, you do creative things, right? I don't have focus to get things done. You don't have focus, you do focus, right? So we could hypnotize ourselves with the language saying, I have this, as opposed to I could do this. And so going back to energy, you don't have energy, you do things to help create energy. Right. So if you're stressed all the time, that's taking, energy out of the system. If you're on energy vampires, taking energy out of the system, right? If you're not exercising, you're not generating energy. If you're not sleeping, so on. So you need to optimize your energy. Things that everything that you talk about on your show, and then finally, somebody could have the P and the E, purpose and limitless energy, and still not be motivated. And I was thinking, like, because I know people who are fit in that category, but they're still not doing this stuff. And I was like, oh, that thing can be too big. Like, oh, I want to meet the love of my life and live happily thereafter. I want to have that perfect body, or I want to get 1 million followers, or whatever it is, right? Build the next unicorn. That's way too big. So S3 in the equation, the final part, small, simple steps.
Hmm.
I think one of the things that halts our progress and demotivates us is if you're intimidated by something or you're confused. And we know a confused mind doesn't do anything, right? So clarity is power, small, simple steps. We've had on our show people like James Clear about atomic habits, tiny habits, Dr. BJ Fogg, break things down into small, simple steps. And so here's the magic thing. So if you want to work out and you're no, that's you want to be motivated to work out, right? As your body moves, your brain grooves. Exercise is probably one of the most documented thing that's good for your brain, right? It's good for your heart, it's good for your head, right? Brain derived neurotrophic factors, all of that. But if you're not doing that, and I don't just mean working out, I mean just like moving throughout the day. Let's start like there. But if you're not doing that, maybe that's too big and that's too intimidating. A small, simple step, put on your running shoes, right? It's the hard part is like getting into the gym, right? If you want to get your kids to floss their teeth, they're just not doing it. Floss one tooth, right? No one's going to stop at one tooth. They want to clean the room, just get them to put one sock in the hamper, right? Inch by inch, it's a cinch. Yard by yard, it's too hard. That's just true, right? And if someone can't read 45 minutes a day, I totally get it. That's brand. Open up the book. How about that, right? Right. Read one line, and consistency, little by little, a little becomes a lot, right? So that's the equation I would say. And you could take this and superimpose it for yourself, but also if you need to motivate somebody else, say you need them to feel the purpose, because without reasons, you won't get the result. 100%. Are they just not having energy? Because some people, and you could do this at a global scale too. Like if you look at what people think, like just what's in the media sphere, about social justice, about, pandemics, everything, you could break things down into mindset, motivation, and methods, about purpose. And energy doesn't have to be just physical. It could be capital, right? It can be resources, at a micro level or at a community, nation, global, macro level. And then finally, the last one are methods. And I'll leave everybody with this because I want to ask you a question about this model where mindset crosses over with motivation, because there are other words that you hear in the personal development or performance, where mindset and motivation cross over. You have inspiration. I'm gonna give everyone three eyes. Inspiration, like what does an inspiring speaker do or an inspiring movie do for you? It changes your mindset about what's possible and it gives you some little drive and some purpose and motivation, right? But you're inspired, but you don't know what to do, right? Because you don't have the methods. Where mindset crosses over with methods, you have the second eye, which is ideation, right? You believe it's possible in your mind and then you're capable of it and you know what to do, but you don't have the motivation, right? So it's just an idea. And that's pretty common. A lot of people have a lot of ideas. And finally, where motivation and methods cross over, you have the third and final eye, and that's implementation.
Hmm.
Someone's motivated, they have purpose, they have energy, and they have the methods. And so that's implementing. That person's going to be implementing for a long time, but they're still could be stuck in that box because they're only going to be able to achieve what their mindset allows because it's not covering mindset. And then where all three M's and all three I's collect right in the middle, here's a fourth and final I. That's integration. Right in the middle, the center where all three M's and I's connect, that's integration. And for me, that's the limitless state. That's the state where it's just who you are, right? And so when I'm talking to somebody who's excels like yourself, when I'm having conversations with somebody about getting a certain result, is I believe when you're talking about the genius life, is that genius leaves clues. That if somebody is extraordinary in an area with their finances, in their relationship, with their health and wellness, right, with their learning, right, that they're doing certain things other people aren't doing. There's a method behind what looks like magic to the rest of the world. And so when I'm looking for my superpower that I developed over time out of necessity. My inspiration was my desperation. I was on the other side of the bell curve that made the other one like even possible, right? So I struggled so much. And so out of necessity, I had to come up with this, and then coaching people on how to do this. When I talk to you, if I want to talk to you about longevity and energy and all the stuff that you've done with, in your research and your journalism and your writing, is I'm breaking things down into mindset, motivation, and methods. And if somebody is there's this stopgap between where they are and where they want to be, you have to address the bottleneck, right? Because a part of this is we're unlimiting these areas, right? Because if somebody is like not having energy so if somebody doesn't have what they want, I'm like, okay, do they believe it's possible? Do they believe they're capable of it? Do they believe they deserve it? And if that's fine, great. But if it's not, then that has to be addressed first. And then motivation, do they have purpose? Or maybe it's here, but they're not feeling their purpose,
Hmm.
or do they not have energy? Do they not have capability, right? Because they're stressed out of their mind or their spouses, like berating them and taking all their energy and drive. Are they making it too confusing and too overwhelming? Like thinking is good, but overthinking it and wanting to be perfect, perfectionism, that's not good, right?
Right.
So maybe not breaking down to tiny little steps. Or maybe they're using old methods for health and wellness. Maybe they're using old methods for learning, like rote repetition or, like the old study ways or old methods for dating or, whatever. And it's just not good for the times. And so, when we're talking you and I about longevity or health or recovery, my thoughts are like, what are your beliefs about your mindset around health? Like, what are the things that you believe? What are the things you're embarrassed to admit, like that you used to believe, lies? Like, because I would willing to bet for the people who are really exceptional in these areas, there's a common thread of beliefs. Like, do you believe health is something that's static? Like a lot of people in most of society think like, hey, it's just like this is what I'm worth financially, or this is just what I'm worth in a relationship, or this is what health is. Just I either have it or I don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think of health as being as just having a nice body, having
Hmm.
a six pack,
Right.
having a lean toned midsection and strong muscular arms. But health is so much more than that.
Right, and that's their mindset, that's their assumptions, or maybe even and some people have an attitude around health too, that
Yeah.
it's either boring or it's something that's
Well, I think some people feel like they don't deserve it, they can't attain it. When people have uh, it's sort of like turning a cruise ship around
mm,
for some people because they feel like their optimal health is so far from their present state. But But I love the idea of small, simple things that you can do every day,
Yeah.
because over the long term, those small, simple things add up. And what you were saying about letting perfect be the enemy of the good,
Right.
that's a major problem in health. There's like
Yeah.
there's often this perfectionist mindset, and it's propagated by influencers for the
Hmm.
most part. I mean, it's not propagated by scientists. You're
Right.
not going to see this notion of perfectionism in the nutritional literature.
Mm.
Um, so I think that that's the kind of the message that comes across sometimes, especially via social media and also mainstream media,
Yeah.
movies, and things like
Or
that.
maybe people might have picked up, when it comes to health, like it's, like, oh, it's just genetics or something like that. And that would keep people stuck in a box,
Yeah, or
right? If
that
they believe,
you have to go to the gym and you have to have an hour long workout, and
yep.
for you to have had a good workout, you have to leave the gym sweating. You've got to
Hmm.
be sore the next day. None of those are indicators of having had a good workout, by the way.
Right.
So
And those are assumptions. And those are that assumptions will keep people stuck, right? Those are assumptions that are not necessarily true. And just same thing with fitness, they have around food.
yeah, people have misconceptions around food, that you have to eat a certain way. You have to be either strict keto, that keto is the best
Hmm.
diet for health, which is not true. I mean, it's
Right.
indicated for certain therapeutic purposes, and I've talked ad nauseum about the potential benefits of a ketogenic diet. But then we have low carb dieters, and we have low fat dieters, and then you have vegan voices that are telling you that if you
Hmm.
ever eat animal products, you're gonna develop heart disease and kneel over and croak. Um, so yeah, there are a ton of misconceptions when it comes to diet. When in reality, it's sometimes the simplest answer. What was what you said about the most obvious,
Yeah.
oftentimes being the most oblivious?
Yeah, it's the elusive obvious, they
Yeah.
call it. It's kind of like, this is kind of I don't know. I don't know when we should look it up, when the toilet was invented, but I guarantee you toilet paper wasn't invented that same year. Right? So, and it
Right.
probably was a decade or more. So that's the elusive obvious, right?
That's
And
interesting.
so it's kind of like, with the child looking at the tires. And so this idea here is that even when we're talking about mindset, some people are so stressed out about their diet that it negates potentially any benefit they're going to get from it because of this. It's not just what you eat, it's how you eat, right? And the feelings that you're bringing into that process. And some people are eating, they're not even present. They don't even taste the food, right? Or they're doing a million different things, at the same time, or they're working. So they're not even in that kind of rest, digest place.
That's an important point. I think one tip that will help pretty much anybody is to eat is to be present with your food.
Hmm.
To stop eating while you are distracted watching TV or on your computer. There are studies that show that people tend to consume about 15% more calories when they're eating food while distracted by an e-reader or watching
Mm.
TV, et cetera. And so many people, I mean, and again, not letting perfect be the enemy
Right.
of the good. I will eat in front of my TV too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be the first to admit I'll whole bag, um, paleo pretzels, paleo
Oh,
puffs,
I didn't even
whatever it
I
is,
didn't even know that phrase, hold
smart sweets.
back.
Yeah, you heard it here first. It's a Genius Life original. I will whole bag. There's this pretzel brand. What are they? Quinn pretzels. Dude, have you ever tried a Quinn paleo
I have
pretzel?
not,
They have a new flavor. We're not sponsored by them. Garlic pepper.
but contact Genius Life.
Yeah, sponsor us. So good. And I'll go through the whole bag. I'm
Yeah.
not even kidding you. My brothers look at me like I'm an insane person.
Yeah, and again, for all this, we don't have to like the idea behind this is thinking is good, but overthinking and wanting to be perfect, I don't think anyone would say that's good for anybody. So this would just be one example of a conversation I would have about our mindset that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, again, most people we're learning all the methods, people are posting all the methods, or we're hearing about it. But I just think a big part of success is just the invisible stuff that's going on in our minds that came there through our upbringing and expectations, and we delete and we distort, and we generalize things to kind of fit a certain kind of mold that around certain expectations. And yeah, and it can lead to erroneous behaviors, and also certainly a skew in the results we're hoping for.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you something about you were talking about the benefits of reading,
Mhm.
in regard to knowledge and language acquisition. Is there any functional difference between reading a physical book
Uh-huh.
versus listening to an audiobook? Because some people prefer to listen to
Yeah,
audiobooks.
I like both. I mean, I like watching YouTubes for your podcast. which I'm a fan, and I also like to listen to it also as well. When it comes to reading, I think it's the best way to compress information. I think reading is to your mind what exercises to your body. I just think it's a powerful way to kind of keep your brain just fit. That being said, yes, there is. In terms of uh, audio and like audiobook and reading from a print or digital, let's talk about that first. Um, in terms of retention and comprehension, it's actually skews for reading an actual book instead of listening to it.
Interesting.
And one of the reasons is the contributing factor. This is kind of obvious, but when you're listening to a podcast or listening to an audiobook, we're usually doing something else,
Mm,
right? You're working out, you're driving, you're cleaning the house. So that's just your attention, and potential distractions because you're multitasking. And I think that's a big contributing factor. Usually when someone's reading, they're just reading. They're not driving or working out or cleaning their house. Right. So I think that's a big part. For me, I prefer physical books. I don't know. How are you? Like digital when I travel because I don't want to. I read a lot, so I don't want to really carry. I'm traveling for the next few weeks, so I don't want to be carrying like lots of books. That's
yeah.
not practical in luggage and everything, but
Right. I often do both. Like I have your book, the physical
mhm.
copy, but then I also like to be able to listen to it
Yeah,
via audiobook when I'm sitting in my car. And I know a lot of people who have bought, my books, Genius Foods or The Genius Life. Oftentimes the people who prefer audiobooks will buy the audiobook first.
yeah,
But then there's so much information that they tend to
mhm,
then end up going and also buying the physical book
yeah,
so that they can highlight and dog ear pages and things like
yeah.
that.
I'm a big fan of that. With our audiobook, we did something where I read the chapter and then I had a friend in studio come in and she would ask me questions about that chapter. So we had these little discussions after every single one. So there's like you could do more, you could do various things, right? My thing is there's no right or wrong. I just want people to do it. Digital readers are interesting. They're convenient, just like digital note taking is convenient. Like some people like to handwrite notes, other people like to digitally note take. And when they're tested, when students are tested, whether for comprehension and retention, between handwriting notes and digital note taking, handwriting notes actually score better.
Wow.
Um, and digital is obviously better for storage, and it's obviously better for sharing with other people. Some people like handwriting, and one of the reasons why is because a lot of people could type pretty fast. Like a lot of people who are listening to this could type, pretty much as fast maybe as we're speaking, but you can't possibly handwrite that fast,
Right.
right? And so it forces you to filter the information, right? To listen for the most valuable information and as you're organizing in your notes. And with note taking for me, I've done multiple podcast episodes and I just have different ways of taking notes. For me, I put a line right down the page because I like handwriting notes and then digitizing them. But on the left side, I capture. On the right side, I create. So really simple. On the left side, I'm taking notes. On the right side, I'm making notes.
Hmm.
Meaning it's kind of like akin to left brain, right brain. And this is way oversimplification, right? Left brain, logical, right brain, like imagination, creativity. But it's kind of like on the left side, I would capture, oh, this is how you remember names. This is the best, genius foods, right? This is the best time to, how to optimize your sleep. You're capturing. But if your attention is going to go somewhere else, like you're going to get distracted, your imagination is going to pull you somewhere else. I'd rather it go on the right side of the page, right? Your creative side. So then you're just going to write your impressions of what you're capturing. Oh, this is, how does this relate to what I already know? How am I going to use this? Right. When will I use this? Because I think honestly, for every hour you spend listening to a podcast or reading a book or on Clubhouse, I would say you had to spend at least another hour, like one to one, putting that stuff into action, and set a schedule. I think one of the most important performance, tools that we have, personal growth tools we have is our calendar, and when we schedule everything, we schedule our meetings there. People, parents might schedule PTA meetings, investor meeting, whatever, doctor's appointments. But are we scheduling our own growth? Like we know if people don't write and schedule their meditation time, then you're busy. That all that void's gonna be filled, and at the end, we're like, oh, I didn't meditate, or I didn't work out today. Like I didn't do my Wim Hof breathing, or my, you know what I mean. If it's not scheduled, so I think it's just really important to get in the habit of doing that.
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky. My assistant Sydney, she schedules my workouts in the morning for me. But it's like a routine for me that I've adopted
Hmm.
and that I feel really good about. I like to work out fasted, and I like to eat around noon. So that means that the 10 to 11:30, 10 to 11, 11:30. block for me. Uh, 5 days a week generally. That's like when I like to hit the gym. It makes
between
it
10. Yeah.
yeah, between 10 and 11.
Yeah, and that consistency is important. And for people that, I really do believe the treasure we seek is hidden in our daily routines. So I'm a big fan of having morning and evening routines and training it. And I think for habits, the most important thing is you want to make what's good for you. You want to make it as easy as possible, and you want to make the things that are not so good for you more difficult, right? So if touching your phone is a thing at night or in the morning, like moving the phone into the other room or the out of armor, that would make it you know easier to do the good things
It
and
increases the
live your life.
friction.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Even, like during, when we were all locked down and everything, I would put when we're going to the gym, I would put like a kettlebell right in my office doorway. So I would just trip on it. So, but I made it easy. Like for me at night, like first thing in the morning, I want to drink a cup of a glass of water, room temperature, but it's easier for me to go up to my bedroom and put the glass there the night before. Right. So I make it really easy and my probiotics are right there. Right. And so, I think it's so important. My journal's there. I have a fiction. The only three things on my bed on my nightstand. That could be a good podcast question. Actually, I never thought about like what do you have on your nightstand?
That is a really good
Yeah,
question.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I'm just thinking about like what's there. Because I'm just
What
like
are
I like,
so tell me,
yeah,
what are the
yeah.
three things that you have on your
For
nightstand?
me, I have an Aura ring. Like I have a sleep monitoring metric thing. I have a journal because I write my dreams in there first thing in the morning. So because I think it's important to remember our dreams and do a little gratitude exercise in my journal. And the two other things is I have a fiction book and a glass of water, a fiction book. I don't read nonfiction during night, but I for the longest time when I first learned these strategies, speed reading and stuff, I would just read nonfiction because I felt like I was at such a disadvantage. I lost all these years of not being able to do this stuff, but I found so much value in like fiction reading. And it's been shown to help with empathy,
Hmm.
EQ, the storytelling, the whole creative, imaginative process. But I don't. I like reading that stuff at night. I don't like reading stuff that gets me in my executive brain. I don't read things on psychology and physiology and learning
Interesting.
theory because then my mind will go and I won't. That's not a really good place for me to get into that
Well, it's
parasympathetic.
interesting because you want to be told a story before you go to bed. I mean, that goes back to
There you
us
go.
being
Wow.
children, right?
I didn't even. That's wired in really
Yeah,
early.
it
Yeah.
is. You want to be told a story, whereas nonfiction books are just, it's like facts. It's very much like
Yeah.
left brain,
Very much so.
executive function, morning, yeah, analytical.
What's on your nightstand, man?
Oh man, I have a tray with some black tourmaline stones.
Okay.
I have a good friend who's very much into like the LA spiritual community, crystals and things like that. I can't honestly say that I'm super into that world, but they made it was an argument that at the time was very convincing that having black tourmaline stones by your bed, it basically absorbs negative energy,
Okay.
whatever negative energy you're experiencing in your
You're
life. Not
gonna
that,
see Black Torrent like the sales go through the roof, right? Like
yeah,
this
something
this
maybe.
episode releases.
They're like these. I got them on Amazon. Honestly, it comes
Okay.
in a little baggie, and they're like these chalky, really beautiful, actually,
Can
like
you put that
rocks.
link in the show notes
We'll put it.
so I
Yeah,
could buy some too?
yeah, we'll put it in the show
All right.
notes. But basically, it sucks up negative energy wherever you have it in the house. They say to keep some by your bedside, by like your desk if you spend a lot of time like
Okay.
working in one area. I've got my blue light blocking glasses on
Nice.
my nightstand, which are important to block bright blue light at night when you're trying to wind down, so as to not suppress
Mm,
uh,
melatonin.
too significantly your melatonin production. And then I have a little night mask. Um,
You sleep with a night mask,
I don't sleep with a night mask all the time. Because I
but
actually,
if you're waking up at 10 a.m. like you did today, you need.
yeah, you'll need something like that. We have Genius Life night masks at thegeniuslife.com. Not so subtle plug. But no, but the reason why I don't sleep with it every single night is because my room doesn't have blackout curtains, but I am a freak. I like to sleep with a pillow on top of my head,
Okay.
which normally does the job.
Okay.
But my cat sleeps with me sometimes, actually
Mhm.
most of the time, and sometimes she will wake me up way earlier than I intend on waking up. She likes to, and in particular when I have the pillow on top of my head, nobody cares about this. I'm just like
I,
she'll reach her paw, which has, of course, razor sharp nails at
mhm.
the end of it, to try to like tap me and wake me up. But
Oh
the
wow.
claw is like
Yeah,
hurt.
yeah, yeah.
So I get woke. That's how I get woken up sometimes at 6 in the morning.
I get the pillow thing then.
Yeah. And so at that point, when she does that, then I have to put the mask on because the pillow doesn't work as well because
Gotcha.
I'm already awake. So anyway, but those are the three things that I have on my nightstand. What a great question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed that conversation, you're going to love this one.
I've often heard in the last, 20, 30 years that your life can change in a minute, right? And we know that you can get into a car accident and your life can end in a nanosecond, or it can change. But also, the right person or the right question and the right decision can change your life. So it's before you were born. It's May 1980. Put into perspective, I am 19 years young, working in the shipping department, making $1.65 an hour, opening boxes, closing boxes, shipping boxes, getting them in, being bored out of my mind, hating it. And my brother says, hey, there's this guy that I teach tennis to. My brother's a tennis pro that I think might be able to help you. So I took the train from Montreal to Toronto. We went to lunch with this man, Alan Brown. He asks me, why am I doing the things I'm doing? I said, I don't know. Why don't you stop? I said, because I want to have money in my pocket. I want to have some fun with my friends, and my family can't afford to give me any money. And I'm not making enough money at work. So again, I'm speeding up the story. And then he says to me, he said, what are your vision and your goals? And I said, well, I'd like to get my own car. I'd like to move out of my parents' house. And I'd certainly want to get a better job. He says, well, that's all nice and dandy, but let's go further out, 5, 10, 20 years from now. I was like, I have no idea. So he hands me this document, Max, and it was the 1980 goal setting guide. What the fuck's a goal setting guide, right? So it asks me the first question, how much money do you want to have upon your retirement? Retirement. I'm 19 years old. I want to get a job. Retirement. My father's not even retired. Second question, how much net worth do you want to have upon retirement? And I looked at Mr. Brown and said, Mr. Brown, what does net worth mean? I have no idea. What kind of lifestyle do you want to live? What kind of car do you want to drive? What kind of home do you want? What kind of clothes do you want? Where do you want to go? And I had all of these questions. And so I wrote out, I want to have $3 million net worth when I retire at age 45, 26 years later. I want to travel the world first class. I want to retire my parents. I want a Mercedes Benz. I want a 4-bedroom house. I want Italian clothes. I just wrote all this shit out and I just made it all up. And he looks at it, he goes, this is actually a pretty great lifestyle. And I said, well, thank you. And he leans down or over to me and he says, I'm going to ask you one question, son. And the answer to this question will determine whether you achieve every one of these goals. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, one question is going to determine if I can achieve $3 million net worth, this house, this travel. And he looks at me and goes, are you interested or are you committed to achieving this lifestyle? And I scratched my head a little bit, and I'm like, what? Am I interested or am I committed? And so I looked at him and I said, Mr. Brown, what's the difference? And he leans over, he said, son, he said, if you're interested, you'll keep doing what you're doing. If you're interested, you'll keep using the fact that you left high school in grade 11, you failed English and math, which I just told him. He said, if you're interested, you'll allow your current beliefs and circumstances to control your behavior, which means you're just going to keep achieving the same things. If you are interested, you'll do what's easy and convenient. If you're interested, okay, you will not do what it takes to achieve your goals. But if you're committed, you will upgrade, and I'll never forget this, you will upgrade your identity to match the new destiny you want. So you'll upgrade your beliefs, you'll upgrade your skills, you'll upgrade your knowledge, and you'll absolutely change the disempowering, destructive habits you have right now. And you will become the type of man capable of achieving the goals. And he goes, by the way, every one of those goals is totally achievable. And I know because I've achieved way more than that in way less time. So he leans over and he puts me on the spot. He goes, so are you interested or are you committed? I'm like, holy shit, this guy's putting me on the spot. And I'm feeling a little bit nervous. And I don't know why, Max. I just went, I'm committed. And he leans over, reaches his hand out to mine. He says, great. In that case, I will be your mentor. I go, wow, what's a mentor? True story. I had no idea. And he explained to me, he says, a mentor is somebody who has walked the path that you want to walk. A mentor is somebody who will save you the time and energy, and sometimes money, of what not to do. And a mentor will also share with you what to do and why and how. I said, awesome. Well, I'm in. And he goes, great. And I was living in Montreal at the time, living with my parents. I said, great, I need you to move to Toronto. And the first words out of my mouth, move to Toronto, other than you that I just met now, my brother, who's a tennis pro, I don't know anybody in Toronto. He said, you don't need to know anybody in Toronto. You just need to make a decision. It says winners make decisions. Losers make excuses. Holy fuck, here we go again. So I said, but I don't have a job. He says, well, I'll give you a job working here, but you have to move here so I can mentor you. So I kept going with excuses. And he said, stop, look at the excuses you're already telling me. You just told me you're committed. He said, when you're committed, you do whatever it takes. When you're interested, you come with excuses. I said, fine, I'll move to Toronto. He says, good. He said, on May 15th, there's a real estate course. I need you in that course. It's 5 weeks, 9 to 5 every day. And when you pass the course, I will give you a job. I said, you want me to go to school? I failed English and math. Doesn't real estate have a lot to do with law and legal stuff? Some. I said, I'm not good at school. They kicked me out. He said, stop. There you go again. And this happened for probably about 10, 12 minutes. And I said, fine, I'll go to school. He says, great, you need $500. I said, $500, I have $40 in the bank. He says, great. Winners make decisions and they figure out how they can because they must. I'm like, fuck, this guy's just dropping these knowledge bombs with me. And my brother said, well, I can lend you $100. Maybe mom and dad could lend you some money. Maybe our sister could lend you some money. So Max, in a short story, 2 weeks later, I moved to Toronto. 10 days later, I moved to Toronto, quit my job, moved to Toronto, enrolled in the real estate school. And on June 20th, 1980, I got my real estate license and he gave me a job working on commission only. And over the next 18 months, I made $151,000.
Wow.
That's kind of like the short version of interested versus committed. And then being taught what to do by somebody who's already done it.
I love that. You shared a limiting belief that you had, that you weren't good in school, right?
Yeah.
And I think neither was I. I wasn't very good in school, but we tend to create these narratives, which I'm sure, I'd love to have you speak to, but we create these narratives and then most of us take those narratives with us to the grave.
That's right.
But the reality is, and I've learned this over the past couple of years, that it's not that I wasn't a good learner or that I wasn't good, that I didn't have the potential to be good in any school. I just wasn't good in the schooling environment that I was put into for myriad reasons when I was a kid. But that doesn't mean that I wouldn't have excelled if I went to music school or if I went to medical school or if I went to
or the school of life right out there. Right?
There you go. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well said. You don't even have to go. I mean, school is just a construct, right?
That's exactly right. Well, what's interesting, and I love where this is going, because when I moved from Israel to Montreal, I didn't speak English or French. I spoke only Hebrew at 5 years old. And so I got 2 years behind on just the language. So I didn't do well from grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once I got into like grade 6, 7, 8, I actually started doing really well in chemistry and biology. Didn't do well in math or English, but chemistry and biology, I did well. And I was fascinated with chemistry and biology. By that time, I actually, could speak and I understood. And I spoke Hebrew, French, and English now. And it wasn't until the latter years, like getting to like 19 years old, 20, 21, that I realized I'm really fascinated with this belief structure, these habit structure. And one of my first events that I ever went to, and this was like 1980, 81, the instructor asked, how much do you know about your own brain and your mind? I didn't know anything, zero. I know I've got a brain. I don't even know what is mind. And he says, do you think that the beliefs you have drive your behavior? And everybody put their hand up and said, of course. And then he said, well, what are beliefs? Like, what are they in the brain? Were you born with any beliefs? No. Were you born with a self-image of whether you're good enough, smart enough, worthy enough or not, whether you're self-confident or not? Were you born with any fears of failing or success, or fears of being embarrassed or shamed or ridiculed and judged? That's, I guess, not. Were you born with any habits? No. And he said, well, then obviously something happened in your life and in your environment to create these beliefs. He said, now, did you ever believe in Santa Claus? And everybody put their hand up, like we believed in Santa Claus, more or less, and the tooth fairy, more or less. He said, well, that wasn't true, was it? And you were able to let that go. Well, why not understand that beliefs and habits and self-image and self-confidence are nothing more than reinforced neural patterns in our brain? And if you don't like the beliefs or they don't serve you, you don't like the habits and they are destructive or don't serve you, why not get rid of them and create constructive, empowering ones instead of destructive, disempowering ones? And like, wow, I could do that? And he said, yeah. And so how the fuck do you do that? Because I want those. That was the beginning of me being fascinated with neuroscience and neuropsychology. And it's been a 41-year journey of behavioral neuroscience and behavioral psychology research, but more importantly, application. Right? How do I apply what we're learning about the most powerful biocomputer, bioorganism in the whole universe? We all own them. It's worth $100 billion, but nobody ever gave us the user's manual. We're just poor operators, but we can become better operators. Like we can become better at checkers. We can become better at chess. We can become better at tennis or basketball or knitting if we learn what to do and then we practice. Right. And so my journey started with having some really, really smart mentors who were able to create frames for me, a way to look, at me, right? But also a way to see the world of possibilities and probabilities. And what I believe today, the 2022 timeframe, right? We're right there is 107 billion humans have walked on Earth. You want to get healthier? We know what you should eat. We know about hormones. We know about exercise. We know about sleep. We know what you should do. That's not the problem. You want to make more money? We know how to make more money. You want to build a business? You want to write a book? You want to start coaching? You want to start a podcast? We know how to do that. That's not the problem. The problem isn't that we don't know how to. Maybe some people don't know how to, but that is the least of the problem today. The majority of the problem is something much deeper than that. And that's the arena I love to play in, because there's really only 4 things that hold us back. And I'm sure we'll talk about that and we'll have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, I want to hear about the 4 things that hold us back. But it's funny when you were talking before about where beliefs come from, my mind goes to odd places sometimes, but it made me think of like implants. Like they're just literally just mental implants, like fake boobs, right? But I know many women now, actually. I've had, one of my close friends, Sarah Ann Stewart, has been on the podcast, and she talked about how she had these boobs put in, but once they ceased to serve her, and she realized that she was having all these unexplained health symptoms, which she traced back to, to having these foreign objects in her body, she got them out. She got a breast explant, which sounds kind of like a non sequitur, but it's not. So it should be that easy, is my point, is if you harbor beliefs that have been implanted into your brain that are no longer serving you, explant that shit, baby.
Yeah, I agree. The challenge is most people don't have a process by which to do it. It's a skill set issue, not a desire issue, right? And so with breast implants or explants, you put them in, you take them out. When we're dealing with a neural network, right, a brain, if you think about our human brain for just a moment, we know that we have about 100 billion brain cells. So I like to give people a visual. Think about you have 100 billion small marbles in your head. And these marbles, okay, when you hear stuff or you see stuff or you feel stuff, create connections, almost like the end of the branches of a tree. They start to formulate these connections where it's called DSPs, dendrite spiny protuberances, these little tentacles that connect. And every time we hear something, every time we experience something, anytime we reinforce a thought or emotion or behavior or result, these connections become stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And they go from a conscious, maybe 1 or 2 time or 5 time event that's a conscious effort into a subconscious pattern that requires almost no energy for our brain to activate. So if we were to think about this as a belief pattern is nothing more than a reinforced neural network, the question then becomes, can I atrophy or deactivate this belief system that may have served me in the past? Maybe it hasn't. And is it possible for me to deliberately, consciously create a new belief that is much more powerful? No differently than a software programmer can go in and program a software code, and then the software code runs until they change the software or upgrades the software. It just does what it's supposed to do. Well, what if we just thought, maybe my brain operates a little bit like that, and maybe it's time for me to upgrade my software around my beliefs, my identity, my self-image, my self-confidence, my self-worth. And is it possible to do that? Well, of course, because there's something called neuroplasticity, which says that we can actually rewire the brain. We can actually rewire our own brain. And no differently than if you exercise, you can strengthen your muscles. My latest New York Times, or my latest best-selling book, not New York Times best, it's called Innercise. We can innercise to strengthen our core neuromuscles. And now we're getting to the domain of deliberate conscious evolution, right? Where I am deliberately and consciously evolving myself, and I am now using my brain as a tool of mass construction instead of a tool of mass destruction, because it's so freaking powerful. But a lot of us got these wrong ideas and wrong beliefs when we were kids, or we stood up in a class and gave a wrong answer, and our friends, embarrassed us by joking around and laughing at us. So we uh-oh, maybe I shouldn't speak up, because there are mechanisms, circuits in our brain that avoid pain, avoid discomfort, avoid being embarrassed, avoid being ashamed, avoid being rejected in a billionth of a second. And if we don't have the awareness of the circuits that have been triggered and then what to do about it, that's like not knowing what to do if somebody walks in front of your car and you don't know how to steer to the left or to the right. And so now we're talking about being able to control our brain better and to strengthen the beliefs and the habits and the self-image so that it matches what we want to achieve versus us recreating patterns are more of the same.
I love that. I mean, just think about how limitless the human brain, your brain, listener, person listening to this right now, your brain is as limitless as the freaking universe. And yet so many of us, we get caught in these ruts, right?
Yeah.
We ruminate, hold on to limiting beliefs. Yeah. We don't create an environment by which we can form habits that are going to be productive for us and lead to our success. So talk to me about Innercise and some of the things that we can be doing every day, me included. I mean, I'm not perfect. I get stuck in ruts. I tend to, take the comfort, the safe route. at times, not necessarily with my work, but personally, I go for what's comfortable, what's safe. I eat at the same restaurants all the time. Yeah.
It's not just you. There's a reason why there's a hierarchy of how our brain actually makes decisions, without us even knowing it. So the number one priority of our brain is for safety. Right. So life, safety. Okay, I get that. Number two is all around glucose regulation and energy regulation. And why is number two so important? Well, because if we have to fight, saber-toothed tiger, so to speak, then we have to have the energy in our muscles to be able to fight or to run away. So our brain is managing glucose. And anytime we want to shift, let's say a behavior, or shift from, let's say, making $5,000 a month to 10, or 10 to 50, or 50 to 100, our brain says, oh my God, that's going to require energy. And the natural automatic propensity is not to do that. So we actually have to override a biological system that's been evolving for a couple of million years. So number one is safety. Number two is energy conservation or regulation of glucose. Number three is avoidance of any pain or discomfort. Now, if you were to remove my hair, my skin, and even my skull, what would you be left with? You'd be left with this brain, this 3-pound blob that's getting, light coming in through the eyes, which are part of the brain, sound coming in through the ears, attached to this nervous system with a sympathetic and parasympathetic, side to it. And any time that we alter behavior, this sympathetic nervous system, the fight, flight, freeze system, activates as a precautionary measure. And if there's any chance that you might fail, you might be embarrassed, ashamed, ridiculed, judged, you might waste time, you might waste money, you might lose, your brain just puts on the brakes of motivation and behavior. These are just circuits that go on or off in the brain. There's nothing wrong with you. The system is freaking perfect. But most people don't understand how these systems work. You get in your car, put on the ignition, fires up a spark plug, engine turns on, put into drive, hit the gas, you go. You want to slow down, put on the brake. You learned how to do that, but you didn't know how to do that to begin with. Well, what if I told you that before you can even think about whether there's a chance of you failing, your brain has already accessed the database of any information that's in it from your 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of being alive. And it says, oh my God, I read about something 3 years ago, that's in my biocomputer that a person who tried what I'm about to do failed and they lost a bunch of money, or they went on this diet only to gain all the weight back and then some. This is happening in billions of seconds in the most powerful biocomputer in the whole universe. So we set these goals, we get excited, we release dopamine, the reward, neurochemical in our brain, we get all excited. But then right next to that, our brain's going, but the last time you did this, you lost the weight. You gained it back. The last time you got in shape, okay, you let it all go. So all that effort was for nothing. So there are certain circuits and triggers that cause us to behave consistently with our comfort zone, homeostasis, right? And so unless we understand what's happening and then how to override the brain's natural propensity to conserve energy, keep us away from killing ourselves, avoiding pain, then we are going to keep repeating patterns and stay in our comfort zone. This is why lottery winners, lose all the money within 3 years, because their external world doesn't match their internal map of reality. This is why people who lose money gain it all back. It's so fascinating when you understand that there's three main networks in the brain, and there's multiple circuits that turn on or off. It's like you're driving your car and a light goes on. Like you've never thought about taking a hammer and hitting the light. The light's just telling you, hey, your back left tire is low on air. Okay, great. Back left tire is low on air. Let me go look at it. I'm down on windshield wiper fluid. There's all of these signals that we have learned how to navigate in our external world. Red light, stop. Stop sign, stop. Green light, go. But what about our own messages, our own emotions, our own gut, that is so intelligent. We haven't learned how to pay attention, to be aware of what's happening within us. So that means we are reinforcing patterns, and whether they're constructive or destructive, positive or negative, good or bad, our brain doesn't give a shit. It's just doing what it does. It's a bioorganism, okay, that we can actually teach and train. So, for example, you asked me a question, how do I start to inner size? Last year, I wanted to get into the best shape of my life. I was 59, good shape, but I wanted to get into the best shape of my life. And I knew that my behavior to get into the best shape of my life would have to change. I'd probably have to work out even more. I'd probably have to tighten my diet. I've been a vegan for 8.5 years. I haven't drank alcohol in 12 years, but I was a sugar addict. And so that I knew that I couldn't get into the best shape of my life as a sugar addict. So I created a document of what my life would be like, okay, with a 6-pack at 60. And I'll show you something, and hopefully my background, you'll be able to see. So what I started off with is, this is my Exceptional Life blueprint that has my entire life in here. I don't know if you can see that right there.
Wow, yeah. Yeah, space shuttle.
This has got about 40, 50 pages in here, but specifically
for you guys who are just listening, you could see what John's holding up on if you go to youtube.com/Max Lugavere. Because a lot of people just listen to the audio, but this is so wait. But before you, that's incredible.
Yeah. Every area of my life, health, wealth, relationships, career, business, finance, charity, contribution is in this Exceptional Life blueprint.
That's insane. And for how many years have you been like coalescing the contents of that, collecting the contents of that book?
40.
Wow. That's insane.
Every year I tweak it and adjust it. And I teach it to all my students. But I want to show you something. This was the version for this particular year. And I found a couple of pictures, let me see if you can, hold
it up to your chest. Yeah.
There you go.
Just like that. Yeah. And maybe push it out forward a little bit. Push it out forward a little bit. Yeah. There you go. Damn, you are jacked. So wait, when did you take that?
That's not me. That's a picture that I cut out of a magazine. I cut out 2 pictures, then I cut out another one.
You wanted to look like that. Got it.
I want it to look like that by the end of the year. So there were 2 pictures that I cut out. I'll show you another one. But I'll tell you what I did with it to inner size. So there's this one guy over here as well.
Wow, he's in great shape.
Great shape. This guy's in his 70s. The other guy's probably in his 70s. And I asked myself, what would I need to believe in order to be able to have a 6-pack at 60? What would my habits need to be like? What would be the identity that I would have to have in order to get myself into the best shape of my adult life for my 60th birthday? And I was in good shape. I was fairly healthy, but I had to really tighten up on my exercise. I had to tighten up on my sleep. I had to tighten up on my sugar habits. But I got myself into this routine of every day I would look at the image. Every day I would read my new script, my new health story. And last week, this was the picture that I took.
You've got abs. You've got better abs there than I have.
I've never had a 6-pack at 16, 26, 36, 46, or 56. But the point I want to make is I started to daily inner size a new self-image by seeing the picture and then closing my eyes and visualizing myself with that body. I wrote a story that was different than my story. I said, I'm so happy and grateful for the fact that I now have a 6-pack. I'm the healthiest I've ever been. I have released my habit of eating sugar every single day, refined sugar every day. And I wrote out this whole new story that at the time, Max, was not true. But every day I read it, I visualized it, I emotionalized it, and I recorded it to listen to it every single day right after my morning meditation.
Wow.
Now, the question is, why did it work? And the answer is, whenever you take anything, whether it's auditory or visual, written, etc., repetition okay, creates permanent patterns. So I was overriding my self-image visual pattern. I was overriding my habitual pattern. And yes, I had to go to the gym. Yes, I had to sleep right. I had to create a plan for what I needed to do. But then I had to also sustain it long enough to override all of the neural patterns of my old self-image physically, of my old beliefs around, sugar, of my addictions, et cetera, to sugar. And 12 months of discipline, 12 months of inner sizing, 12 months of behaving how I needed to behave, not without its ups and downs. In June, I tore my meniscus. I wasn't able to do the cardio I needed to do. Anyway, so there were challenges along the way, and it wasn't just one, fell swoop of, from fat at 50 to six pack at 60, but it was through the retraining my brain, my beliefs, my habits, my self-image, and my identity every single day a little bit, 7 to 10 minutes a day. I was able to repattern my neural network so that it started to alter my behavior. Right? So when we take a look at any result, I don't care if you want to take a look at your physique, you take a look at your bank account, take a look at your relationship, take a look at your business. It doesn't make a difference. Any result that we look at today is an effect. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, completely.
So if I focus on the effect, I'm wasting a lot of time and energy. But if I focus on the cause of the effect, I'm going to now enter the domain of beliefs. I'm going to enter the domain of habits. I'm going to enter the domain of managing emotions. I'm going to enter the domain of the knowledge and skills that I need in order to alter the result. And I'm going to enter the domain of self-image, self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence. That's all inner game stuff. And most people are not investing enough time on the inner game stuff that causes the behaviors, that causes the results.
So putting pen to paper, with all of this, what are how do you get started? Is it through journaling? Is it through, you were in The Secret, right? Is it through writing down as clearly as possible your goals? Like, where do people begin with all this?
We always start with the end game in mind, right? So you're in Los Angeles right now, and I said to you, Max, I want you to get to New York. I want you to get specifically to Manhattan, New York. Let's go to the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan, in New York. You go, great. I've got a destination of where I am or where I want to go from where I am. Then we say, okay, I have the vision of me being at the Plaza Hotel, and you and I are going to have some afternoon tea. Now I've got a vision of meeting you in New York at the Plaza Hotel for afternoon tea. Then we say, okay, whatever date it is today, I can walk there. I can take a bike there. I can take a plane there. Okay, I can take a car there. So now I can choose, how am I going to get there? And now I can start to say, okay, based on my vehicle, I can say, okay, by such and such a date, I should be here. Or such and such an hour, I should be here, then I should be there. So now we have a vision that's clear. Now we set some goals. Now we set some strategies for how am I going to do it? And now we get what I call my little Asaraf in gear, and I start taking action. Now, adjacent to that, if we want to go deeper than that, we go, okay, what would I need to believe in order to really do all this stuff? Well, I need to believe that I can do it. I need to believe that I deserve it. I need to believe that it's going to be a lot of freaking fun. I need to believe that there's probably going to be some challenging times, maybe some detours, but I'm still going to stay the course. Then I go, okay, what else do I need to believe? And I'll write down a whole set of beliefs of what is it that I need to believe in order to make that vision and these goals freaking impossible not to achieve. Part one. Part two, what would my behaviors need to be? Well, I would need to pack. I would need to do this, and this. Or you say, I don't know. Then I go, okay, well, who knows? Who knows how to get from LA to New York? Right? Well, I'm going to Google it. Right? Just freaking Google shit today. You can get more answers than you ever thought possible. Okay, so now I know how. And then I'm going to ask myself the final question. Am I interested or am I committed to getting to that destination and having that amazing time? Because if you're interested, you're going to do what's convenient. And if you're committed, you'll do whatever the fuck it takes and you will get your ass in gear and do it. So before you set any goals, whether it's for money, business goals, your podcast, your book, your coaching, whatever it is, all the how-to already exists. You may not know how, I get it, but the how to exists. And the only way you're going to learn how to and follow through is if you're committed. So stop setting goals that you're not committed to. Stop setting goals that, yeah, it would be really nice. Oh, that would be fun. High five, kumbaya together. That's just airy fairy shit. In this world, on this blue planet, okay, behavior wins. And if it's the right behavior, right, at the right time, in the right order, there almost is no goal we cannot achieve. Almost. I know there's some stuff we can't achieve. I got it. But for most people, health, wealth, relationship, career, business, fun, and experiences, like, come on. We know how to achieve you want to double your income in the next 12 months? I guarantee you can do it. And I'll prove a point to you. If I said to you, Max, take the most amount of money you have ever earned, and I want you to 5x that in your mind. Don't tell me the number, 5x in your mind. If I said to you, if you do not achieve that number that you just put in your mind, 5x, and everybody who's watching, do this with me, and I'll prove something to you in a nanosecond. I want you to imagine that 5x, and does it scare you a little bit like, I'd like to do it, but I don't know how to right now, or like that would take a lot of work. I have to change this. So imagine it's 5x. What if I shared with you this little scenario? Max, can you think of one person in your life that other than you love? It could be a parent, a brother, a sister, a best friend. It could be even a pet you've had that you would like kill for. Can you think of one person?
Definitely.
Tell me who.
My cat. No, I'm just kidding. I have, off the top of my head, I thought of my friend, Craig Clemens, who's one of my closest friends.
Great. So imagine 12 months from today, if you don't achieve 5x, your best income year ever, to the minute, you will never see him again.
Oh, no.
You will never, ever see him again. No discussions, no conversation, just boom. You have no idea what's happened to Craig. Now, what would you do starting like right now? Which belief would you let go of, or limiting belief? Which strategy would you think about? Who would you call for help? What would you start doing right the F now for this week, next week, the week after, this month, next month, this quarter, next quarter, so that has an almost insanely low possibility of happening?
What would I do? I'd do whatever I had to do.
Right. So here's my question for you. If you really wanted to make 5x, right, start doing that stuff now, because the 5x isn't the problem. You can do it. And if it's the same Craig Clemens that I think it is, he could actually help you probably 10x.
You're right. He probably could. He's a good friend to have. He's a good player to have on your team.
Yeah, super, super great guy. But you see my point? So if somebody says, I want to lose weight and get in the best shape of my life in the next 12 months, great, you can do that. Somebody says, you know what, my relationship is struggling right now. I really want to make it amazing. Great, you can do that. Somebody says, I want to start a business. I want to write a book. I want to become an outstanding coach. I want to travel the world. Whatever it is that you want to achieve, if you are committed, you will be resourceful even in the absence of resources. If you are committed, you will find a way. If you're interested, you will find an excuse. Right? And so let's stop living in this world of what I call the drug of choice, excusitis, when we can really achieve so much more. But we don't achieve more just because we want more. We achieve more when we back it up with the identity to match that destiny, with the beliefs and the habits. And does it take work? Yeah, change takes some freaking work. But once you learn the process of change, then you become an adaptationist. Then you become somebody capable of setting a goal and then following through to completion. So you're not a goal starter. You have the identity of a goal achiever and finisher. That's an identity, right? And so what I love to share with people is if you're committed, the process is here. There's a way to train your brain. There's a way to find out what you should do, when you should do it, how you should do it. If you don't have resources, there's plenty of people that will help you that already have the resources, but it doesn't happen for people who are interested.
Yeah, 100%. I get hit up all the time on social media, people asking for me to mentor them, and I just don't have the bandwidth. Like I don't really have that.
Yeah.
My life set up in a way where I can facilitate all the people who ask. But I will tell you that my assistant, Sydney, who now basically runs operations for what I do here at The Genius Life with my podcast, my speaking, she came to work with me. She literally just slid into my DMs on Instagram, basically, just saying that she'd love to work with me at a time when I really needed the help. But she also made it really easy for me to say yes. She told me where she lived, which was in close proximity to where I live. She shared her background, her eagerness, that she was super excited about what it was that I was doing. So yeah, it is a testament to taking risks. Even if you think that person that you want to reach out to, he has so many followers, how's he possibly going to see what the message that I send him? That's rarely the case. So I love this advice. What about when it comes to setting healthy habits? I love the line that implies that a person, I think the line is, a man is what he repeatedly does. Mm-hmm. That excellence is not necessarily an act, but a pattern of actions. So do you have any tips for us in that regard?
Yeah, there's a lot of neuroscience on habits, and so we understand the mechanisms of habits, which are comprised of a trigger, a behavior, and a reward. We're not going to go down that path. One of the things that we do know is to break or create a habit. If you think about what is a habit is an automatic thought, emotional, behavioral sequence that is triggered by something internal or external that requires almost no energy for us to implement and execute on. Okay, so that's what it is in our brain. And here's what we also know is there's a place in the brain called the striatum. And so when we repeat a certain thought pattern, emotional pattern, or behavioral pattern that creates a result, our brain says, okay, since you've done this so many times, let me automate it and let me move it from this conscious effort part of your brain to this subconscious striatum part of your brain that's connected to a few other circuits. And so here's what we know. It takes between 66 days to 365 days to either start and reinforce a new pattern so that it overrides an old pattern. So the old belief, it takes 21 days to start a habit, is just wrong. It's from the 70s. In 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, all of my students, okay, and I've got a bunch of brain training programs for a variety of different things. All of my students must agree, A, you're committed, not interested. But the second commitment they have to make, give me 100 days. And why 100 days? Because if I can get you to retrain your brain and to take the action required for 100 days, I can help override the old habitual patterns. Now, here's the thing with habit. Initially, when you're starting, the habit is more important than the intensity, complexity, or duration. Let me repeat. The habit is more important than the intensity, duration, or complexity when you start. So if you want to start, let's say, an exercise habit, commit to 5 minutes a day. 5. You don't want 5, 3. Don't commit to changing your sleep and your diet and your exercise and say, I'm going to do it for an hour and a half a day. You won't. You may do it for an hour and a half, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, and then you're going to start to rationalize. And what does that mean? It means that your subconscious mind is going to cause you to tell yourself rational lies. I've done it for 5 days. I can take a day off. I've eaten so well, I don't need to eat well today. And then you break the pattern. And so what if you just said, I am going to commit to whatever I'm going to commit to 100 days. I'm going to lower, the amount of resistance that I have to overcome my old habits. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to focus on the habit instead of how long I do it. I'm going to focus on the habits. You want to, my friend BJ Fox says, you want to start flossing your teeth, floss one tooth in the morning, one tooth at night. You want to start exercising, get your running shoes out, put them near your bed, then put them on, then go for a walk for 5 minutes and build the habit first, then add time, intensity, etc. And so if we did that for 100 days, I guarantee you, your brain's going to start to drive you towards doing that pattern. That's why habits are so hard to break, because it doesn't require any conscious effort. It's all done by your subconscious mind, which is 97 to 98, 99% of our daily behavior. And so whenever we're dealing with how do I build a habit, you build a small habit first that's consistent, and then you layer on more intensity or complexity at first. When I started on my program, I just said, I'm going to exercise for 5 minutes a day, and I'm going to just eliminate sugar. Those are my only 2 things. 5 minutes a day. I'm in Montreal right now, visiting my sister for a family issue. And, I still go to the gym every day because I can't not go to the gym. Like I can't, not going to the gym feels awkward to me. Right. But I built the habit of a little bit every day so that I reduced my I don't feel like it muscle.
I love that. I have the same relationship with exercise, by the way. So I really appreciate that you just said that. It's odd for me to not get some kind of fitness baked into my day because for me, it's a lifestyle.
That's right. It's part of your identity too. It's your identity that fits into your lifestyle. And what happens is when you start to do anything every day, even a little bit, it becomes part of who I am.
Yeah, that is, it's literally, it defines you. It's like, you almost want to put it in your Instagram profile bio. You want it to be that core to who you are. I'm not saying you need to put it in your Instagram bio, but and these tactics can be applied not just to fitness, but to, for anybody listening whose life dream has been to write a book. It could be sitting down at the computer and writing just a few sentences here and there, or launching the podcast that you've always wanted to launch. You just have to be, I suppose, highly incentivized to want to do it, right?
Committed.
Yeah, committed.
I'm just going to keep coming back to that, right? I wrote my first book. I failed English in grade 7, and I wrote my first book. It became a New York Times bestseller. That was, 20 years ago, having it all. Wrote my second book, The Answer. It became a New York Times bestseller. Wrote my third book, The Vision Board Kit. It became a bestseller, not New York Times. Wrote my third book, Inner Size, which I shared with you earlier, became an Amazon #1 bestseller. So I didn't think I was a good writer, but you know what I did? I just sat down and wrote. I wrote here are the things I would want to talk about. And then I just started writing one paragraph, and then another paragraph, and another story, and another paragraph. Then I had an editor clean it up for me and got my work out into the world. Oh, wow, people actually like it. I was not supposed to write a book. I wasn't supposed to build some pretty decent companies. I wasn't supposed to get into great shape. At 49, I was 243 pounds, borderline diabetic, hypertensive, and had a fatty liver.
Wow.
At 60, I'm in the best shape of my entire life.
So great.
So the key is, we can allow our circumstances to control us. I get that. And it's easy. But if we choose to live a life that we're proud of, a masterpiece. I decided many years ago, I want a masterpiece of my life. I don't have to make the most amount. I don't have to, for me, it's just like, for me, what would make my life a masterpiece? And I designed that first. And then I started to build the foundational pieces of the beliefs, the perspectives, the paradigms, the habits, the behaviors. And then just a little bit each day. I'm not the smartest guy on the block. I'm not the dumbest. I'm not the fastest. I'm not the slowest. But I do have some extraordinary habits. And when people tell me, you have a lot of discipline, I say every human being is 100% disciplined already to their current habits. Right? So what if I just understood that some of my habits are constructive and move me towards my goals, and some of them were not? How do I let go of drinking too much alcohol? How do I let go of not exercising? How do I let go of not sleeping well every night? How do I let go of eating too much sugar? Oh, okay. So now I start to ask, how can I let it go? And how can I create powerful habits? Like in business, I've always done well. Like I did well in business from 19 to 60, and I've built a few pretty successful companies. So that area of my life was great, but a few other areas, didn't do well. I was divorced twice. Now I've been with my wife, Maria, for 21 years, married for 16. I've got two amazing sons. So I had to use the same principles and the same building blocks I used in business, in relationships, in health, in all these other areas of my life. And then I was able to understand the neuromechanics of change and of habits and of beliefs. And then I get to teach it now so that other people can have maybe a little bit of light shined on their path and make their life a little bit easier to live.
Is there a social aspect to any of this? Because I feel like very easy as a single guy, unencumbered by family. I don't have any children. I don't even have a dog. I have a cat. That's how non-committal I have been in my life. But what about for people who are listening, who they're in serious relationships? They can't just get up and go from their current domicile. They maybe have a few kids, a dog, obligations to who knows what. And they're hearing us, and they're thinking to themselves that this is like all a pipe dream, that they're stuck in their rut, that they have friend groups who look at them a certain way and refuse. Because I know that this happens. We're very lucky. We mentioned the great Craig Clemens, who's been on my podcast a number of times. He's a dear friend of mine, Sarah and Stuart. Like I'm surrounded by people that are very dynamic themselves, and in terms of the way that they think about me. So I could one day to the next create a different identity for myself. And for the most part, they would probably be like, oh, Max is a creative guy. Why not? But I feel like that's not necessarily common or the norm in other social groups, where friends kind of look at you a certain way, and then they make fun of you if you draw outside the lines of their perceptions of how you are supposed to be. Is any of this ringing true? And if so, can you speak to it?
Sure. So it's not our circumstances that control our lives. It's our choices, right? And it's also what we allow, right? What we accept, right? But that's also driven by our identity and what we expect, right? So listen, I've been fortunate to have, hundreds of thousands of students who are or have been in my programs. I've been fortunate to have positively impact, I believe, the lives of millions through my work. And I can tell you stories like Joni Sanderson at 66 in a small town near Perth, Australia, never made more than $12,000 a year, raising 6 children on a widow's pension, starts to think differently about herself, and in her first year makes $72,000, and then teaches how to train brains for senior citizens. I can share with you Kat Rama Brooks, a wedding planner on the island of Kauai in her early 80s. Her
Wow.
business is about bankrupt, zero money. Her husband's dying of cancer. Her life is a mess. Starts to reframe, recalibrate what she believes is true, sets a new vision for herself. In the next 12 months, earns $247,500, takes $50,000 of that, takes her husband and herself on a 6-month trip to Thailand, pays 50 grand. Okay. Then he dies, but she wouldn't have been able to do that unless she changed her paradigm. I could take you to Carl Harvey in London, who was suicidal, about to commit suicide, watched my brainathon, started to retrain his brain. Carl Harvey now has 2 businesses doing millions of dollars a year. I can go on and on and on and on, whether you're a hairdresser, a homemaker, divorced, it makes no difference. What shapes your destiny are decisions, not circumstances. So if you want to say, I can't because, and you give me all the reasons, what most people don't understand, the very nature of this biocomputer, as soon as you or I say, I can't because, fill in the blank, our brain says, okay, let me show you how true that is. Now, what if we just shifted that a little bit? A little technique says, in the past, I used to believe or think or feel that I couldn't, and now I'm learning how I can. Your brain says, oh, great, open the possibilities to that. We can do that for limiting beliefs. We can do that for circumstances. If I gave you $100 billion computer, $100 billion computer that can access any information in the world, and come up with how you can achieve putting a Mars rover on that planet, okay, and bring it back to Earth, okay, what would you ask this biocomputer to do? Like, holy shit, if it could do that, right? Maybe it could do stuff like, help me have a great relationship. Maybe I can get healthier. Maybe I could just double my income in the next 12 months. Maybe I could save my business. Maybe. Well, you already own that biocomputer. And then you can use that biocomputer to access this thing called the internet. Okay. And you can find out just about anything you want right this second. First time, in the history of our species, right, in this internet era, that we have unlimited access to the books, the videos, the people, the tools, the resources, but we will not access them or use them when we start focusing, on why we can't. And we have this victim mentality, and we think we're a freaking oak tree that can't change.
Yeah, like our furniture. You're not furniture.
Yeah.
Our furniture doesn't change.
Yeah, if you don't like the results, the effects, why not get curious as to the cause? If you're single, but you'd love to be in a relationship and maybe married and have kids, then the question should be, well, what may be preventing me from being committal? And I'm just using something you just said in case that's there. If I have this business and it's struggling, okay, like what's causing me and it to struggle? Without judgment, blame, shame, guilt, or justification, just awareness. Because I don't care what business you're in. I don't care where you are in the world. There's somebody doing 2, 3, 4, 5, 10x. Well, why not you? Well, because I believe that he or she either has the knowledge, the skills, the contacts, the money, the tools, the resource, and I don't. That's a limiting belief. Well, what would have to happen to release that limiting belief and create a new empowering one that'll change your paradigm and change your behavior? Oh, I didn't think of that. Well, good. Let's start now. Let's use this biocomputer. You're not your brain no more than you are your hand or your finger or your heart or your lungs. You have a brain, but there's an observer and this intelligent, sentient thing within us, right, that can use their brain better. And I challenge everybody to go, wow, what if I could, change my beliefs? What if I could, feel like I am more than worthy enough instead of not smart enough or worthy enough or deserving enough? What if I could, without working harder, working differently, but achieving 2, 3, 4, 5x? Like, what if I could? What would that look like? Would I want that? And if the answer is, well, sure, I'd want that, then let's go, well, how can I? Like, if I could, then how can I? And as soon as we get into using this biocomputer with better questions, right now we start to open up the world of possibilities. And since we live in, I also love quantum physics and quantum mechanics a little bit. And since we live in this participatory universe, since we are made up of 100 trillion cells called quanta, and these cells are vibrating packets of energy, and our level of thought oscillates 100 trillion of these cells. And in the world of quantum physics, there's this quantum field we live at. Is it possible that my focus is actually collapsing, okay, waves of possibilities, and my focus takes possibilities and collapse them from wave to particle of probabilities? Wow, that's a little deeper thought there of, am I participating in this intelligent, omnipotent universe? Well, fuck yeah. Wow, are you kidding me? Of course we are. That's why, you can walk into a room and not a word has been said, and you know that there's a problem, and you say, hey, what's going on? Your friends say, nothing. And you go, come on, the dog knows something is up. We're picking up these vibrations, okay, of emotions and thoughts with our intuitive faculty of mind. Well, can I practice that? Well, of course you can. But are you going to practice and start listening to it? If you have these goals and dreams and a vision of a better future, there is also a way for you to achieve that.
Wow. I mean, it's true.
Whether
you believe that you can or you can't, you're
true.
Right. Yeah.
It's true. It's true. And this is the domain, right, of using our higher cortical functions, right? Learning better questions, learning to give things meanings that empower us versus disempowering, learning to question, like, is this belief the truth? Like, is this Santa Claus again, a tooth fairy? Because I let go of that. Well, maybe I can let go. I'm not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough. Maybe I can let go if I don't have the money, I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the skill. I'm too young, I'm too old, I'm too white, too black, too Asian, Caucasian. Maybe I can let that go. And in letting that go, maybe I can make the possibility of a better future, health, wealth, relationships, career, business, finances, charity, fun, and experiences. And I can live an extraordinary life that I'm so freaking proud of. And I'm so vibrant that I just want to share it with others, so that they can see, hey, you can do this too. You can go from being a caterpillar to a butterfly. Here's how.
I love that, man. I have goosebumps. So I'm so inspired. I'm gonna 5x my revenue. Right. I don't know. Yeah, I'm actually. It's interesting because for me, I really don't think about money, but I'm really grateful that I get to do this for a living. Like to me, it's the greatest thing in the world that I was able to somehow, for myself, architect a life where I get paid to do what it is that I love.
Yeah, that's right.
And that it all sort of financially works out. But if I had additional resources, financial resources, there would be so much more that I could do on top of what it is that I'm doing. So it is an interesting way to think about money that, maybe if you would have asked me 5 years ago, I wouldn't have really thought this way, but I see money now as being a form of energy that allows you to do. Yeah, it's a tool.
It's a tool. Money doesn't say anything. And money just says, here's how well I'm playing this game of commerce or business.
Yeah.
It doesn't say what a beautiful, kind heart, giving, loving person you are. It just says, here's my score for playing the game of business. And this tool, if we go back in time enough, when tribes were living in small communities, there wasn't any exchange of money. You'd have the hunters would go out and get the game or the fish, and somebody go pick berries, and they came back to the campfire and they cooked stuff and they all ate. And then this tribe, married off their sons and daughters, and they set up a camp, maybe 3-4 kilometers away. And this tribe became really good at fishing, and this tribe became really good at hunting. This tribe became really good at growing, stuff. And then this tribe tribe says, well, I'll trade you some of my seeds and nuts and berries for some fish. And this tribe that had the fish traded with this tribe to do some of this. And so we created this system of bartering, and we traded coins and seashells and as a means of bartering and exchange. And when people started to move further away, we had actually chocolate, okay, with stamps on it. And then we had coins. And then when the coins became too heavy to travel between, one city and another, we moved to paper bills. And when that became too heavy, we moved to electronic means as a means of exchange. So money has never supposed to be a value of a person. Money was meant as a means of exchange. Now, some people said, hey, when I have a lot of money, I can have more power, more control, more peace of mind. I can have more impact for the good or for evil. I get that. But money has never been anything more than a tool. So the question then becomes, first, I'm going to take care of my needs and my family's needs. Got it. Then, if I can take my knowledge, my skill, my message, my product, my service, and I can help more people, if money is a means of exchange and I can help you with my X, and you just give me that green paper with ink on it that you Venmo me, there's fair exchange. And the marketplace determines how much this pen is worth, how much this water is worth, how much these reading glasses are worth. The market determines that. So if I can get good at giving people options to get this pen or these glasses, then they're going to give me that green paper with ink on it that they traded somebody for the work that they do. So the only purpose of money is I want to do more of what it is that I want to do more of. And so I don't eat any differently anymore.
Yeah.
I don't eat any differently anymore. I don't fly differently. I don't travel any differently anymore. But I am able to impact many, many, many more people through the charitable contributions, through the stuff that I'm able to do, because I don't have to worry about money anymore. Right. So when we talk about money, first, of course, I get it. It's for safety and security. I get that, but then once you have everything you need, then it's about impact. And I want to have a lot of impact. Some people do, some people don't. That's okay. You make more money, you make the amount of money that you feel you want to make to fulfill your life's purpose, vision, and mission. Nobody else's. And what may be great for you may not be great for me. I've got two sons I mentioned earlier. I've got one son that wants to be a millionaire by the time he's 30. He's 26 now. Right? I've got another son that doesn't care whether he's a millionaire and whether I, give him money in his trust account or not. He doesn't care. They're great. All I want him is to trade his life for what he loves and something that he feels proud of, so that whenever, life is over, he can go, yeah, what a freaking great journey. Thanks, Pops. Thanks, Mom. I had a great time. I traded my life for what I loved, for my truth. So not everybody's supposed to make a lot of money. Not everybody's supposed to build, big companies. You're supposed to do what's in your heart that fulfills you, so that you could say, my life is a masterpiece.
Hey, if you like that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.
You start to approach exercise, I think, like humans did for nearly all of time, in the sense that you don't move unless you have to. Right? So there's a reason that exercise sucks today. It's because for all of time, when resources were scarce, evolving in these environments of scarcity, if you have a limited supply of food, why would you ever move more than you needed to, and thereby burn more calories and put yourself in a position where you could die, right? We are adapted to try and be as lazy as possible.